The first Big 12 conference opponent of the Brent Venables era at Oklahoma is a familiar one for the Sooners head coach. It's his alma mater, the Kansas State Wildcats, who come into this football game against Oklahoma with a record of 2-1, a new quarterback at the helm this year in Nebraska transfer Adrian Martinez, and one of the most dynamic running backs in the nation in Deuce Vaughn occupying the backfield. This game's set to kick off at 7 p.m. at Owen Field this Saturday, and here to preview the Wildcats, Ryan Gilbert of GoPowerCat.com on the 24/7 Sports Network, our K-State counterpart. Ryan, first off, thanks so much for taking the time. And
thank you.
I want to start with the game that Kansas State just played this past Saturday. An upset loss that really nobody saw coming. 17-10 home loss at the hands of Tulane. I had the Wildcats as my lock of the week last week. With how good they had looked through two games, it seemed as though they were going to trample the green wave, especially at Bill Snyder Family Stadium. So first and foremost, I want to ask you, what went wrong? What went sideways for the Wildcats in that upset that was so unforeseen?
Well, you look at K-State's first two games against South Dakota and Missouri, the Wildcats really didn't have to do too much throwing the football. Bad mistakes from, both Missouri and South Dakota really just allowed K-State to sort of cruise to a victory and just, run the football, don't turn it over. And they had comfortable wins like we saw. Tulane was a bit better of a team than South Dakota and Mizzou. And, you can't get away with winning when you're just running the football, no throwing game, no passing game. And it really kind of depends who you ask. If, some people say it was Adrian Martinez, it was his fault. He didn't make the throws that he should have made because, let's be honest, Parker, there were quite a few throws where he just didn't pull the trigger and decided to check it down the Deuce Vaughn for a few yards. It's almost as if he's been told, it's the exact opposite of what we saw at Nebraska. He's just been told to not turn the ball over, which is obviously that's what you want, but he needs to find that middle ground. But also the play calling with Colin Klein was really not good, if we're being honest, in that Tulane game. I don't know if you can pinpoint it on Martinez or Klein. I think it's probably a 50-50 mix, but certainly a frustrating loss. And Kansas State really just didn't get the ball going through the air, to answer your question. That's why they lost. They had no passing game.
Okay, as they look ahead to Oklahoma this weekend, you can't help but note some parallels between this contest and the last time Kansas State came to Norman back in 2020. They were fresh off a loss to Arkansas State in their season opener. They were down, I believe, 30 to 40 players, if my memory serves me correctly, due to COVID-19 protocols. The entire nation took it for granted that the Sooners were going to steamroll Kansas State. Lo and behold, the Wildcats go down 35-14 in the third quarter before stringing together a comeback for the ages and ultimately prevailing in that contest 38-35. So how similar do you think these two circumstances are, and where does a monumental upset effort for Kansas State begin this Saturday in Norman?
Well, looking back to that game in the pandemic season, I mean, Oklahoma really just let its foot off the gas, right? And if they don't do that, they're cruising to a victory. And K-State, obviously took advantage of that. I don't think K-State really has much of a chance to pull out the upset. There's certain times where, I can talk myself into it personally. I just don't see it happening. And for a couple of reasons, if Adrian Martinez plays the way he did on Saturday against Tulane, they're not going to be competitive. They're probably not going to cover the spread. Oklahoma is going to steamroll Kansas State. Adrian Martinez is going to have to turn things around. He's going to have to flip that switch in his head. If that does happen, there's a chance K-State really goes out and plays competitively, but also there's a good chance we could see exactly what he did at Nebraska, turning the ball over, forcing it downfield, making poor decisions. So I think, 50-50 chance Martinez even comes out of his shell. And then probably if he does, there's a 50-50 shot that he even, plays decently, right? So there's probably a 25% chance for K-State to even be competitive in this game when I'm looking at it. So, K-State, there's no doubt about it, has to play its best game of the year, and the passing game has to get going. It's funny because you look at South Dakota, you look at Missouri, like I said, Wildcat fans were still optimistic after those games because many thought that the playbook was being hidden, right? Until you have that competitive game. And then they had the competitive game. and they don't show anything, right? So something's going to have to change. A lot more aggressive plays for Kansas State, not just from Adrian Martinez, but with the play calling as well.
What does Deuce Vaughn have to do, and what does the Wildcat offense have to get out of the stud running back if they're going to hang with the Sooners?
Do what he always does. And I think that's the issue. You know, if you're Kansas State, he's obviously a great player, but how much of your game plan? I mean, it's pretty easy. That was kind of the key for other teams to figure out Deuce Vaughn in that pandemic year after Kansas State pulled off the upset in 2020 against Oklahoma. Like, they went 4-0 to start the Big 12. And then other teams' defenses realized, hey, you stop Deuce Vaughn, and that's pretty much all you've got to do, right? So, you know, Deuce Vaughn can do what he does. He's got a special talent, but as long as there's no passing game, you know, it's a pretty easy formula to stop for defenses if that's all you have.
Defensively for Kansas State, and obviously they have some really, really talented pieces at all three levels, but what do you think the overarching key is for the Wildcats on that side of the football as they prepare for battle with Dylan Gabriel and an offense coordinated by Jeff Lebby?
Well, K-State's defense this year really has been respectable, and through the first two games, they didn't give up a touchdown that wasn't in complete garbage time. So, you know, Kansas State's defense is going to do its part to keep this game competitive. The defensive line is certainly one of the best throughout the whole conference. No doubt about that. Highlighted by Felix Anudike-Uzomah, the preseason defensive player of the year in the league. And then he's got some good pieces around him. Eli Huggins, Nate Matlack is, I would say, questionable to play in this game. Jalen Pickle, he's got guys around him. So the defensive line is probably the strongest, you know, position group on that team. I would say apart from them, though, I would say average, maybe a little above average throughout the rest of the defense. Echo Boedo and Julius Brents are the two cornerbacks that are highlighted for the Kansas State Wildcats, and they're fine. They're respectable. They're serviceable. I don't know if they're going to go win you a game, but they're certainly not going to lose you the game. So the secondary, the linebackers, you know, those are two position groups that had some question marks coming into the year, but they've done their job. So I think the storyline really is not about the defense in this game. You know, they're going to do their job. It's going to be on the offense. You know, I think that you look at the Tulane game, they didn't have that one play where it really swung the momentum and gave K-State like a easy victory, right? They had that in South Dakota, in Missouri, where the defense and special teams just handed a win to the offense on a silver platter, right? I don't think that's going to be the case again on Saturday like it was last week against Tulane. So the offense really is going to have to step up and make some plays and help out that defense.
Let's zoom out and look at the big picture for a second. Give me the pulse of Wildcat Nation. How is that fan base feeling about Chris Klieman as head coach in his fourth year at the helm?
I would say overall, probably a C+, B-. Chris Klieman has a bowl victory under his belt last season against LSU. Now, you know, the Tigers didn't have like half their starting lineup playing in that game, it feels like, but still beating LSU is beating LSU. I think a lot of fans throw out that 2020 season just because of the pandemic, right? K-State, like you mentioned, that Arkansas State loss had like half of its roster sidelined. So overall, I think Klieman, when under normal circumstances, he's won 8 games in 2 of those 3 seasons when you throw out the 2020 year. So I think overall Klieman's doing a good job. He's not on the hot seat. I think right now fans are frustrated with the Tulane loss more than anything, but it's just one game. And, you know, Kansas State, you know, last season fired offensive coordinator Courtney Messingham, and eventually he got replaced by Colin Klein. That's, you know, something that fans were really frustrated with, was the play calling on offense. And Klieman was smart enough to realize that, and he let him go. So I think he's, you know, cognizant of the pulse of the fan base to keep them happy enough, right? Now, I don't think K-State's going to, you know, drastically turn this thing around after a loss to Tulane, but, you know, overall Klieman's done a good job. His seat is not warm at all. You know, he was doing a fine job. They've been good. They haven't really had a great season, but they've been steady.
OU fans still shudder to hear the name Colin Klein. What are your early impressions of him as a play caller?
Well, you know, like we've mentioned, it's easy. It's very easy to see that he played under Bill Snyder, right? Bill Snyder is one of the best coaches in all college football history, right? But, you know, he was rather conservative, rather vanilla, rather bland. And you can see that with Colin Klein through his first 3 games, right? And like I mentioned, you've got the first 2 games where you didn't have to show off the playbook, and then you have a close game and you don't really see much, right? So Colin Klein he's been fine. He did a lot of, I wouldn't say like gadget plays, but K-State's offense was on fire in the bowl game against LSU last season when he was the interim offensive coordinator, right? And that's what basically solidified him to get the job. So, I think we'd like to see, some more flash from the offense, but, fans are, frustrated. There's no doubt about it because of, 3rd and 1, let's have Deuce Vaughn running it while Adrian Martinez is in the shotgun, right? Don't overcomplicate these things. And Martinez can run the football, and so could Colin Klein. So they're similar in that regard, but Colin Klein was just hard-nosed football, blood all over his elbows. Martinez is a little quicker, probably not as strong, going up against defensive linemen. So they're dual threat quarterbacks, but also at the end of the day, I think they're just different because Martinez, like we saw at Nebraska, could really sling it, and then Colin Klein was just kind of a 1st and 10, 2nd and 7, 3rd and 3. Go pick up that first down, right? So they're 2 different quarterbacks, and I think Colin Klein is still trying to learn how to call plays for somebody that's similar to him but not identical.
Last thing for you, Ryan, 2 predictions. Score prediction for this Saturday evening and prediction on where Kansas State finishes record-wise at the end of the regular season.
Well, I haven't gotten around to making my prediction yet. I will probably go, I don't think it's going to be too close of a game. I'll go 38 to 14 Oklahoma. And I'm not just saying that to please y'all. I do think that Oklahoma is not going to overlook Kansas State given the past couple of games, because Kansas State gave OU a run for its money last season in Manhattan. So I think it'll be an Oklahoma team that's prepared. I'll say, I think right now after that Tulane loss, the outlook of the season changes a lot for me. I'll probably go 7-5, maybe 6-6 if things really start to fall off. But, there were some 8, 9, 10 win expectations. I mean, Adrian Martinez, if he flips the switch and swings that pendulum and he really starts to play with confidence and things go well, K-State could, flirt with a conference, making the Big 12 title game, right? But until that happens, I think maybe 7 wins is probably where K-State belongs right now.
That's Ryan Gilbert, GoPowerCat.com. Hey, if you're a Kansas State fan, no place better to go for inside information than GoPowerCat. 30-day trial for just $1. And if you're a Sooner fan watching this video as well, hey, and you're not already a VIP at OUinsider.com, that is the place to be if you want VIP insider intel on the football team, the staff's recruiting efforts. Got it all covered for you. And hey, look, same deal. 30 days, $1. That's all.
My favorite part is going over to the OU site and looking what your boards are saying after a loss. So you can do the same thing with K-State.
That's very true. Well, and I think both boards can commiserate over the Dylan Edwards situation and how that all transpired.
We'll save that for another day.
All right, Ryan, thanks so much for your time. We'll talk again soon.
Thank you.